So we're going to be reading Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This book was first published in 1932, and quite a lot to talk about. It is the best way to describe it is to say that it is futuristic science fiction. It is supposed to be a utopia, but really it's probably one of the first works that we would identify as a dystopia. A utopia is essentially an ideal or imaginary place or society. And it comes from Greek. Greek, ou means no or not, and topos means place. So when you put those together, utopia, it literally means no place. But the idea is that a utopia is kind of an ideal, perfect society, but imaginary. And a dystopia would essentially be the opposite of a utopia in that it is not ideal, or tries to be ideal but fails miserably. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not a utopia is possible. And usually the idea behind a utopia is that any society that says that it is a utopia, in fact, can't be, because in order to create a perfect society, there has to be some sort of hidden suffering. So the novel takes place in the future, quite a long time from now. In the book, it is referred to as AF 632. So Anno Ford 632. So but that corresponds to our understanding of years. So it takes place in the year 2540, or 2540. Anno Ford means in the year of Ford. If you are familiar with the term AD, Anno Domini means in the year of our Lord. In Brave New World, it's in the year of our Ford, because Henry Ford, the man who invented cars essentially and was famous for mass production and creating the assembly line essentially in order to be more efficient, he is kind of regarded as God. So instead of saying, "Oh my Lord," people will say, "Oh my Ford," and things like that. So Brave New World, this cover, a little bit bizarre. It's a person who kind of has gears for body parts, essentially. The title Brave New World comes from a quote from Shakespeare's play The Tempest. And it is a quote said by Miranda. Miranda is actually a name that Shakespeare made up. And Miranda has lived her entire life on an island with her father, who's kind of like a wizard or magician, and two like spirits, Ariel and Caliban. And so she has had no contact with society, or what we would consider to be society, has had no contact with humanity. And there is basically a ship is shipwrecked on the island that Miranda and her father Prospero live on, and she sees men for the first time, and she's just taken in by seeing men for the first time. And so she says, this is where the title comes from, she says, "Oh wonder, how many godly creatures are there here, How beauteous mankind is, oh brave new world that has such people in it. And she's just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Men and other people. She's never seen another woman either, but she's particularly excited to see men. And so she is just absolutely thrilled that she is seeing people for the first time, and she thinks that they are amazing. One of the problems, obviously, with her saying that they are godly creatures and how beauteous mankind is, that she has no experience with other human beings other than her father, and then the other two people on the island are not human. And so she says she has no idea what humans are really like. She's easily taken in, and she thinks that these men are just the bee's knees, and unfortunately, they're not so amazing. So, Brave New World, that's where it gets its title from. So obviously read everything that you want into that. There's a character who quotes the actual quote. So there's direct reference to Shakespeare, and this quote said by one of the characters, John. So anyway, this is my very, very long introduction to the book. There is, at the beginning, there is an epigraph, and an epigraph in a book is a short quotation or saying that is put at the beginning of a book or beginning of a chapter, and it's supposed to suggest like the theme of the book or the theme of the chapter. And this is the first page that the epigraph is on, but I have filled it with notes. And if you can see, I don't know if you can see, it is in French, actually. And I can't read French, or I can't do it justice. But this part here is this French epigraph, and it's normally by itself on the page, but I've taken a lot of notes. And it is by a man by the name of Nicolas Berdyaev. And even though the quote is in French, he actually was a Russian philosopher. And he originally was a Marxist, so followed the teachings of Karl Marx. Communism and socialism are based off of the teachings of Karl Marx. And he, at one point, was exiled in Siberia for his Marxist thoughts and wanting a socialist Marxist society. He ultimately ended up giving up on the concepts of Marx and found them to be incredibly problematic because Nicolas Berdyaev, who this epigraph is from, he really truly fundamentally believed in individuality and the creative potential of humans. And Marxist thought, communism, stuff like that, really wants to see people as belonging to a group, and everybody has to be the same and everybody needs to be equal. So that's why he ultimately moved away from Marxism, but really truly believed in the power of the individual and creativity. So his little quote or epigraph at the beginning of this novel translates to this. Excuse me. Utopias seem to be much more achievable than we formerly believed them to be. Now, as we find ourselves presented with another, Now we find ourselves presented with another alarming question. How do we prevent utopias from coming into existence? Utopias are possible. Life tends towards the formation of utopias. Perhaps a new century will begin, a century in which intellectuals and the privileged will dream of ways to eliminate utopias and return to a non-utopic society, less perfect and more free. So essentially, if we are able to translate this epigraph, the epigraph is essentially saying utopias, we should avoid them like the plague or like the virus. And that they are not good, essentially. He suggests that utopias or societies are constantly trying to move towards becoming utopias, but that hopefully modern society will work towards not trying to achieve a utopia, because essentially trying to achieve perfection creates destruction. So our whole novel begins off with this warning against utopias. And of course, this novel is about a utopia. All right. I realize now that this is my introduction has been almost 11 minutes long. So I'm actually going to stop this here before I try to read the first chapter. Okay, so stay tuned for chapter 1.